Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back here on a Wednesday afternoon talking some college football. That's right, folks. There's really never no offseason with this sport between, you know, formulating rosters and transfer portal and spring practices happening, and that's come and gone, and releasing the schedule and previewing the teams, and of course, conference realignment. It seems like there's always something to talk about with college athletics these days. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. We're going to take a deep nosedive on San Jose State football now that their spring practices and their spring showcase has come to a close. We're about a few days removed from that. That went down this past Saturday at CEFQ Stadium. So just wanted to come on here and talk about the new roster, some things that stood out to me, some headlines, some storylines that I feel like the fans and just people around the conference, and if you follow this team, just some things to keep an eye on as we approach the summer. And of course, before we head into media days and all that good stuff, because again, this is the time of year where we're still, even myself, still trying to learn about the players, still learn about the team, the new coaches that came along, what's going to happen differently schematically, in particular with this San Jose State team, given the fact that they have a new defensive coordinator. So, again, always appreciate everybody's support. As always, comment if you have any questions about the team that are going to get addressed on this podcast. Always enjoy everybody's hearing everybody's feedback, of course, and subscribe. Doesn't cost a single dollar, and we appreciate everybody's support. For this podcast. So we're gonna keep pumping things out here, and here we are in the month of April. Just talking some college football here in the middle of the week. But SJSU football we're gonna just, quite honestly, the disappointment of the Mountain West in 2025. And I would say you can make a fair argument one of the more disappointing teams in college football last year. Just given the expectations, there was a lot of people, and myself included, that said, hey, this is the team, the way the schedule sets up and what they have on paper and just kind of what they have coming back. And from what we saw in year one, with the spread and shred offense and what Coach Ken can do to coach up his players, everyone thought in 2025 that San Jose State was going to be the prime breakout candidate in the Mountain West to get to the Mountain West championship game and potentially win it, give Boise State a run for its money. And that did not happen. A lot of people I respected thought that this San Jose State team had the capabilities of really having a historic season. And I mean, the schedule, like we said, set up so nicely for them. I sound like a broken record at this point, but that's in the past, of course. That team went 3-9 overall, 2-6 in the Mountain West. And with how disappointing the season was, just required some coaching changes. New defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator, new safeties coach, like new defensive backs coach. Coach Ken Niumatalolo, who's entering year 3 now out here in San Jose, needed to make some necessary changes. And, from all indication, from what I've heard in spring practices and what Coach Ken has said directly to the media, he is saying that he's done he thought he hit it out of the park with his hires, which I'll get to in a minute. But of course, this is a team that is practically brand new. They are one of the teams that has the most roster turnover in all of college football this year, because they are returning just 23% of its production from a year ago. That's second lowest in the FBS. Only team lower is the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, and their head coach, Charles Huff, left for the Memphis Tigers head coaching job. So that explains that, but there is no head coaching change in San Jose. And I would say that's, if you were to talk to say, hey, that's probably a good thing for San Jose State that you got yourself a brand new roster given what happened last year. And of course, it was an older roster, in particular on the defensive end. And a lot of their guys that did hit the portal were on the offensive side of the ball, which of course, the offensive side of the ball for the second year in a row under this regime had themselves a fantastic year from a number standpoint, right? But it didn't translate into wins. I want to just kind of go over real quickly, just kind of the notable departures. If you haven't kept up, with the transfer portal, which I understand you've refreshed Twitter, it's an absolute mess. But just some names that people will remember from last year that are not with the team anymore. Quarterback Walker Eggett, he goes to Duke. Wide receiver Danny Scudero, who absolutely broke out last year, 88 receptions, fifth in the country, 1,297 yards. That was first in America, and 10 touchdowns, tied for 12th. So he broke out in the spread and shred. He's now at Colorado with Coach Prime out there in Boulder. Wide receiver Leland Smith went to UCLA. He was their go ball guy on the outside. Kyrie Scholes, who really flashed in week 2 it was versus Texas, and kind of jumped up the depth chart from there, 768 yards last year. He's now at Utah. Matthew Coleman, a guy that was in the pipeline for several years, was a Brent Brennan recruit, stuck under this new regime, but he transfers out, goes to Sac State. Interestingly, how about the Sac State Hornets? Now Alonzo Carter, their new head coach, the former San Jose State running backs coach under Brent Brennan. So interesting hire there. But yeah, Coleman, 20 receptions, 131 yards, and 1 touchdown last year. Nate Hale, the right tackle, he goes to Arizona, probably San Jose State's best offensive lineman from last year. So a notable loss there. Running back Steve Chavez Soto to Utah, kind of bursted onto the scene once when the whole Floyd Chalk stuff happened last year, when he ended up redshirting mid-season, and Chavez Soto really took advantage. And that was kind of a shocking one, from a lot of people, that he jumped in the portal and ultimately departed. He's now in Salt Lake City in the Big 12 conference. And then 2 corners that I wrote down that were penciled in here. Jalen Thomas to Washington State. He was one of the, freshman defensive backs, one of the corners that had himself a really good spring and summer and ended up starting week 1 and ended up starting every game. He's now at Washington State. Started out really good coverage-wise last year throughout the first couple of weeks, but I thought really kind of showed his youth as, the back end of the season went on, because as we know, the defense was a wreck last year for San Jose State. And then cornerback Caleb Presley to Colorado State. That's now his 3rd school. Still trying to figure out his career. Remember, he was a late spring edition a year ago, and I think that kind of held him back a little bit. But there were some spots where he was kind of lost on the island on that defense, and just trying to find a home where he can mesh. So now he's at Colorado State. As far as some notable additions, not too left. These are the names that I wrote down that are coming in. There's more additions than this, but I feel like these are some names that to keep an eye on. Now, a lot of skill position that left from last year. The entire wide receiver core, a healthy chunk of the running backs, in Chavez Soto and Floyd Chalk. Floyd Chalk now, by the way, I didn't even mention, he's at Southern Utah. So he's back at the FCS level. Remember, previously was at Grambling State for 2 years. So interesting move there. But regardless, some notable additions for SJSU. Quarterback Luke Weaver from Hawaii. Weaver was the backup to Micah Alejado, who was the Mountain West Freshman of the Year. Weaver started the second half in week 1 versus Arizona, or at Arizona last year. That was a rocky game for Hawaii. It was kind of a blowout before it really started. So that was a game that he did play in, but did start versus Sam Houston State and Portland State, which Sam Houston State was one of the worst FBS teams, and Portland State was one of the worst FCS teams last year. But did have a great moment with the game-winning touchdown in the Hawaii Bowl with Alejado getting injured. So again, it's a small sample size, but but there is some starts in the resume for Luke Weaver. He was one of the early additions in the portal for San Jose State, currently fighting for the QB1 job that's been going on throughout spring and summer, and it'll go into fall camp from what we understand. So that was an addition that folks should circle. Some wide receivers, because obviously the entire wide receiver room got decimated via the portal. So SJSU had to bring in some wide receiver recruits. They bring in Jordan Anderson from Sac State, 24 receptions, 361 yards. That was good for second on the team last year. They got wide receiver Jerry McClure from San Diego State. He only had one catch for 8 yards. That was a team that didn't throw the ball last year hardly. They got Dominic McKenzie, wide receiver from BYU. No catches on the ledger in 2025. Wide receiver Anthony Ivy from Penn State played in 11 games, and those games were mainly on special teams. So that was where the wide receiver additions. We mentioned that San Jose State had two exiting running backs. So they brought in Tyler Jacklich from West Virginia with 8 carries and 36 yards. Has some experience at the junior college level prior to going to Morgantown. Redshirted at Wyoming in freshman year. So he's been around the block. I will say he is a bigger running back. This team does have Jabari Bates coming back. I would imagine he's your RB1 at the start of the season. But Jacklich, he's going to be an impact piece, I do believe. Bigger running back as well. San Jose State's got a lot of small running backs on their roster, but Jacklich is like 6'2", 215. So I could see him being on the field in a multitude of ways from a pass blocking standpoint in the backfield, because we saw what Jabari Bates can do, but I feel like Jacklich could, of course, provide a different change of pace, and he's a different type of back, I do believe, as well. So that's a name I think that could have some impact. And then I have two guys on defense that San Jose State added in the portal that I think we need to be well aware of. Safety Brian Dukes Jr. from Cal Poly. This is an experienced player, folks. He played 4 years for the Cal Poly Mustangs, and so he's got 37 games played. This guy's kind of all over the field. 61 tackles, 50 tackles, 51 tackles his first 3 years. Last year, he only played 4 games, on a better Cal Poly team. But I think it's good that you have a 4-year guy coming into your pipeline that's been around the block and has played, respectable football. I know the Cal Poly program wasn't great early on, but last year it got much better. And I think the fans should like as well that it's practically a 5th-year senior that's going to be with your program for 1 year, and he's going to give it all he's got because he's more than likely not going to have any eligibility left. So that is something I feel like is notable, and he's got experience. This is, I think, from the names that I've mentioned, a lot of these guys that San Jose State brought in don't really have too much playing experience, but they all were kind of, highly recruited. They came from, respectable programs. So there's something in there, and I think this staff is just trying to unlock it. Of course. So Brian Dukes, he's been a name that's been thrown out a ton by the coaches on the defensive side of the ball. Like he's been a leader, and he's been kind of, getting everybody on the same page. I think you're going to see him on the field quite a bit in the 2026 campaign. And then one more name I got for you, everybody, cornerback, just because cornerback, with Jalen Boehner graduating and Jalen Thomas hitting the portal, you're going to have 2 new cornerbacks this year. Isaiah Buxton from San Diego State. And we all know, if you followed the Mountain West last year, just how good that San Diego State defense was. Very feisty, very pesky, weren't going to allow anything. And Buxton played 9 games on that loaded defense, 1 start, but still was an impact piece for them, got on the field, was in there for certain coverages. And, he's going to probably be fighting for a chance to get on the field here. This team still has Runye Norton, in the secondary as well, who's gotten some run at corner. So I imagine he'll be fighting for a starting job himself. They got Kewan Bullard, who's been at the San Jose State program for over 3 years himself. So there's some names. There's going to be a lot of new names this year. But those are Isaiah Buxton. I do think is a guy that does have some upside to his game that I do think is going to get on the field. But this is a new defense, or let me correct myself, a new defensive coordinator in Boje Filiamatu. He is been with San Jose State. He was the inside linebackers coach, and when San Jose State did decide to depart with Derek Odom, Coach Boje ended up being the interim defensive coordinator for the final 2 games last year. And those games were 2 losses versus San Diego State and Fresno State, but feel like was job well done, given what the defense was throughout Mountain West play in the first 4 games of non-conference. Was it good? And then feel like you could kind of see I wouldn't say maybe the defense turning the corner, the last 2 games, because the season was kind of all gift wrapped at that point, and the fact that SJSU wasn't going to make a bowl game. But you can just see that the players were providing some fight out there for the final 2 games. And I think they were playing for a guy like Boje Filiamatu. In a spot like that, you could just kind of see the defense flying around a little bit more, especially in that San Diego State game. And in that game last year versus Fresno State, a lot of that was based on quarterback turnovers. And it was a lot of points off turnovers and short fields that led to, a lopsided Fresno State victory in San Jose last year. So, you can't really buy into, the final score in the stat sheet. But if you go back and rewatch those games, I feel like there is some truth, to the defense under Boje being a little bit better. And, that Coach Ken, believes in a guy like him. He's talked about it a ton, just like with the media and saying like, hey, like I've been to his meetings before. This is a guy that, man, when he speaks, like he could really resonate with people in the room, and he knows what he's talking about. And, he's a very smart mind on the defensive side of the ball. Now they're going to, from what I understand, defensive coordinator Boje Filiamatu going to run some stuff the way Derek Odom did. Is going to change some stuff up. Didn't really get too much into that. Maybe we'll get some clarity on that in the future, or if not, we'll see it on the field. But that's what I got for everybody right now, as far as, just what they're running. So very similar to what stuff you saw with Odom, for all those years in San Jose, but there's going to be some stuff they switch up as well in that regard. San Jose State, I guess, just some notable spring headlines. There is a quarterback battle right now for QB1. Of course, Luke Weaver, the guy that they brought in from Hawaii, is battling with Robert McDaniel, who saw some snaps last year for the San Jose State team, and Daniel Rolovich, the true freshman, in that battle as well. So that's going to be going on for the next couple months. I will say San Jose State, their coaches, mainly Coach Ken, said, hey, like this reminds me a lot of what we had in 2 years ago between Walker Egan and Emmett Brown. Like it's really tight and it's back and forth. It's some days Luke Weaver, has himself a good practice. Other days, Robert McDaniel is a good practice and he shines. Other days it's Rolovich. So it's all over the place. They said it's like really close. They can't really, I guess, dissect things from a, separation standpoint with who's going to win this thing. But they said they're documenting everything, every throw, all the analytics. Like they're running a lot of numbers on their throws and, their accuracy and everything like that. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, with what they're doing as far as the quarterback battle, just so they do make the right decision. But this is something that I would say is not, I would be, again, Coach Ken says he was going to narrow it down to 2 quarterbacks at the start of fall camp. And then he wants to name a starter relatively early on in fall camp, just so he can get a starter to run with the ones. Because you want your starting quarterback to really establish that chemistry and really maximize the practices from what you have on the field leading up to week 0 versus USC, right? So I see where they're going with that. I don't know if, again, things could change, but that's what we're at right now. As far as some other bullet points that I have written down, I talked about all the wide receiver transfer portal additions that came in for this team, but Malachi Riley is back for SJSU, and this was a high upside guy that they really liked at the slot position. Previously played at Arizona, didn't play too much over there, but this was a guy that was starting for them last year. Because San Jose State in week 1 versus Central Michigan was rolling out Scudero, Leland Smith, and Malachi Riley. Kyrie Scholes was like wide receiver 4 or 5, and Malachi Riley got injured in the first half versus Central Michigan and ended up not playing for the rest of the year, and was on crutches. He was in uniform at the spring game, and they're still ramping him up. They haven't been able to go 100% with him, but he is on the field. He is doing what he can. And we expect him to be ready for week 1 or week 0 at USC. But that is going to be, I feel like, a gigantic re-addition that San Jose State has. Again, we all know what they do at the slot position. With the spread and shred and with the wide splits, just kind of opens everything up when you have those wide receivers out in space. They make the catch, and it's a lot of yards after the catch with guys that we've seen over the years with Nick Nash and Scudero. Malachi Riley could very well be that guy. If he's out there blossoming and the scheme and the quarterback that ultimately ends up winning the battle is executing at a high level. So that's gonna be big. That's gonna be big. For San Jose State to get a healthy Malachi Riley back on the field, and what we mentioned earlier with Jabari Bates. Jabari Bates had like 180 something yards versus the Idaho Vandals, and in the following week he got hurt versus Stanford, and he was having a really good game in Palo Alto as well. So they really like him. This is a guy that's been with SJSU for several years now, and he's fully healthy. So that is definitely a green flag for the backfield, because San Jose State, we already know they're not going to run the ball a lot under Coach Craig Stutzman, but that is something that they do obviously want to, have themselves a decent run game to keep the defense honest. But we already know that they're gonna sling the football more often than not. And look, I thought their ground game, despite Bates and the chalk situation last year, like, look, Steve Chavez Soto still provided a lot of good stuff with the run game last year. And that's what they envision with Jabari Bates. What we expect to be RB1 in week 0 at USC. So, that is that. as far as some guys that were injured last year that are with the program still, and we expect to be some impact players for the 2026 season. I mentioned the new coaches, San Jose State and Ken Niumatalolo saying, I thought I hit a quote out of the park with my hires this year. Coach Ken said, well, he brings in Brian Norwood, who's recognized as one of the, the top, secondary coaches, in the sport. So he is coaching the corners this year. Joe Dale, he is the safeties coach. Ramson Golfison, which has gotten a lot of noise at the offensive line. He's your new O-line coach. There's been a lot of, green flags with him thus far from, just what we've heard from, being at the practices and Coach Ken speaking, just from there's a lot more yelling in the practices. And it seems like the offensive line, which, has kind of been called out the past 2 years, in a respectful manner, saying like, hey, our offensive line's got to really set the tone. We've heard Craig Stutzman talk about it. We've heard Coach Ken talk about it in his media pressers the past 2 years. Like, hey, we need some hunger on that side on up front. We need those guys to set the tone. And Ramson Golfison has came in, and you can just tell, like, there was a lot of coaching. There was a lot of yelling at the practices that I've been to, which I think is a spark that this team needs. Because if you got yourself a physical group up front, I think it only sets the tone for everything else behind it, right? So that is definitely, a coaching addition that has definitely, I felt like, sparked up over the past, couple weeks since I've been out there. And it's been a vocal room, on the offensive line. And then, that's where we're at with that. Of course, Coach Bo Jagan in full-time defensive coordinator gig, like we said there. And of course, new special teams coordinator as well. Fred Gadici, third stint at San Jose State, was previously at Stanford with those two, with the two Stanford place kickers, with Joshua Carty and Emmett Kenny. I know Emmett Kenny's probably going to get drafted in the NFL draft, in 24 hours from now, or over the course of the weekend, I should say. And then Josh Carty had himself, he got drafted to the Los Angeles Rams, not with them anymore, but you get where I'm going here with. And of course, I feel like deserves its own bullet point. At least for me, I've tweeted about this a ton, just where the kicking situation was last year for San Jose State. Getting a guy like Trajan Sinatra out of the transfer portal was the first move San Jose State made in the portal, was kicker, because we all know with San Jose State's 3-9 record last year, that team probably goes bowling if they make some field goals at the end of games, like the Central Michigan loss. With that coming, they had a chance to win the game 2 different times in the final 2 minutes on field goals. They lost the game at Stanford by 2 points, missed field goals and extra points. They lost at Utah State, and that was a 1-score game. Of course, they lost the disastrous Wyoming game in Laramie when they were up 17 points and missed field goals in that game. You get where I'm going here. Kicker was a need. And what did San Jose State do? Their first portal move was Trajan Sinatra out of Idaho State, who made north of 80% of his field goals last year, went and hit 3 field goals from 50 plus and hit all of his extra points. And from what we've seen him kicking at practice, we saw, I retweeted out some videos on Twitter at Nick Urias _ of the 54-yard field goal that he hit in the spring game. Like, that is what this team needed a year ago, and they addressed the need. And Trajan is a local kid. from San Jose, Silver Creek High School, which is like, 10, 15 minutes from the San Jose State campus. So very familiar with the area. Went to Foothill College, which is a little bit north of San Jose, for his freshman year. Went to Idaho State, of course. Had himself a terrific year in Pocatello, and now is back in San Jose. I talked to him on a one-on-one, and he told me, like, hey, there was a lot of teams that were interested in me, but San Jose State was the team that they made me feel wanted. So I would say there's really no debate right now. He will be your kicker week 0 at USC, unless he's not healthy. Because that was one of the prized possessions in the transfer portal for San Jose State. And I think prized possession, just given the way everything went last year from the kicking game, because San Jose State went 12 for 23 on field goals a year ago. And a lot of those, like we mentioned, like we laid out, notable misses in one-score losses for this team. So I think that is a massive addition for SJSU, just given the fact that that this is like a kicker that could legitimately go hit you from 40 plus yards out. And that is something, it's noteworthy just because, like, hey, you can rely on this guy to make you a big kick in the fourth quarter in a one-score game. But it's one of these things where I think it changes up the play calling and the decision making in these games quite a bit when you have a reliable kicker that that you can trust and you could really go out there to really deliver in, right? Because obviously San Jose State, they've had last year, it was to the point where they were going for it on fourth down in the second half of the season every single time. It didn't really matter what down and distance. It would be 4th and 11, at the opposing 30-yard line. They're going because they didn't trust the kickers last year. So I think it changes up things tremendously from a play calling standpoint, I believe. And I'd be interested. And again, this won't get answered until we see it in games, of course. But what happens if it's a 4th and 3, at the opposing 32-yard line with a 3-point lead, right? Like this, I'm just throwing out a random situation in my head here and out loud, but I'm just saying, like, these are the things that that the coaches are going to be thinking about in the middle of the game when you have yourself a reliable kicker. Like, you're going to take the 3. And, Coach Ken and this coaching staff the past 2 years has kind of gotten a little bit ambitious with some of their play calling, like from the standpoint, like, okay, maybe they shouldn't have gone for it. I go back and look at that Boise State game 2 years ago when Boise State was a college football playoff team, and they had a notable 2-possession lead in San Jose in the first half, and San Jose State went for it on 4th down in the red zone when they probably shouldn't have, and taken the 3 points. And their kicking situation wasn't as bad as it was last year, of course. But again, like, it's things like that where I think if you have a guy like Trajan Sinatra, I don't think that situation maybe even goes into your head, because he can be that reliable for you with his legs. So I think it's a significant addition. I think it changes up a lot for what this team does offensively from a play calling standpoint, again, given the situation, like I just said. And I think, ultimately, you might have a couple, 1-score wins in your resume when you got yourself a weapon on special teams like this team does this year with Sinatra. So a massive addition, probably one of the more, as crazy as it sounds, bigger additions of the offseason, just given, how putrid the kicking game was last year. So, again, a big pickup for the Spartans there. And 2 position changes that I feel like are noteworthy for this team. Tama Amasone, who started the last 2 games of the season at San Diego State and at Fresno State at quarterback, he has transitioned to wide receiver. And again, I asked Craig Stutzman about this on a one-on-one, like, hey, what went into the position move? And he basically said, hey, we're trying to get all of our talented players on the field that we think are ready. And, there was just no way where we could just give in Daniel Rolovich coming in as a true freshman and Robert McDaniel getting a year older and bringing in Luke Weaver in the portal as a potential starter. Like, there was no way that we were going to be able to throw out 4 quarterbacks in spring and give them all equal reps. Like, that was just not going to be possible. And, they talked about it. They liked what Tama can bring from just with his mobility. For me personally, like, what we saw, and I go back to the San Diego State game in particular, where he's kind of just improvising on the fly, because that San Diego State defense was so lethal last year, where he's just going and he's scampering for 20 yards upfield. It was very Nick Nash reminiscent from, when in 2021, the year after the Mountain West Championship, with this team. Reminded me of that when Nick Nash got a lot of run for an injured Nick Starkel, and he's running around and making things happen. Didn't translate to wins. San Jose State missed the bowl that year, but it kind of reminded me of those moments. And we saw the transition with Nash from quarterback to wide receiver. It obviously was, incredible, and the numbers and, just the production and all of that. But they kind of, I think the coaching staff believes maybe not the Nick Nash impact. I don't know. That's gonna be really tough to top, but they think it could just be another pass catcher that could translate really well from quarterback to wide receiver. I guess just given his mobility and the way he runs, and I feel like as a guy that was recruited as a quarterback in Amasone, for him, like, him being in the mind as a quarterback, I think will help him a lot as a wide receiver. I think it could translate a lot better, in him, reading defenses and running routes and all of that stuff. Just because he's got the IQ of a quarterback, I think it can translate into him being a high IQ wide receiver. So I think that's notable. There is a lot of wide receivers in this room. We already know that San Jose State's kind of become like wide receiver U of Northern California at this point, just given Craig Stutzman's spread and shred offense and the numbers that it's put up for all these wide receivers. But I will say this, when it comes to this wide receiver room, and Craig Stutzman said this, post spring game, and he said, I like the depth of our wide receiver room, but this is a wide receiver room that's got depth. They got high upside, but they're young and inexperienced, which I thought was like pretty notable. And he kind of went on to say, like, hey, we're kind of a little bit behind when it came to stuff like that. Like, hey, this group is different from the past 2 years that we had. Because at least, like, they had Scudero last year, who had, like, starts at Sac State. Like, he's been on the field. A lot of these guys in this wide receiver room just really haven't gotten they haven't gotten their feet wet, like, at all. And I think that's why I think this room is very interesting, because these guys were highly recruited, but they just never got onto the field because, one, they're young. And, there was seniors, and especially now, like, it's hard to get on the field for true freshmen, even more so now because of the transfer portal. And most of these teams, especially at the Power 5 level, are just nitpicking at all the G5 schools for all of their, blue chip talent, and bringing them and inserting them into their rotation, and those guys are starting. So it makes for an interesting wide receiver room, given the fact that this team is inexperienced but also young at the same time. I feel like the previous two rooms didn't have that. Like they had experience even 2 years ago with Justin Lockhart, of course. So I think that makes for um, you know some things to talk about and to pay attention to heading into week 0 versus USC, just because I feel like it is a different group than years past. But I mean, we'll see how that transpires. So I mentioned Amasone. He's going to be going. He's going to be in that wide receiver depth with Jordan Anderson, Jerry McClure. We'll mention on Jerry McClure had the 1 catch and 8 yards, like we mentioned last year at San Diego State. Coach Stutzman said he has been the most consistent wide receiver, like from start to finish throughout spring. And he had himself like a nasty, route in the spring game, and he shook off like one of the DBs, kind of shattered his ankles a little bit. So he had himself a good move there. You could see the upside of McClure. That is for sure. And because he was a guy that, was like a 4-star recruit. I think he went to UCLA prior to his San Diego State. So yeah, he was a UCLA recruit, went to San Diego State, didn't get on the field all too much. Now trying to, reignite his career at SJSU. So again, you got a lot of those guys in the wide receiver room. But what we have seen, with Coach Kenny Amantalolo and Craig Stutzman at SJSU, they have a new wide receiver pipeline every year, but they always put up numbers in it. So I think that's the one thing you can hang your hat on. And I feel like if you were to talk to fans, like I feel like you wouldn't be given what the production was with the spread and shred the past 2 years. You wouldn't be also worried from the production of the wide receivers, given the insane numbers this offense has put up under this regime. So that's what I got for you guys on that end from the offense. And the defense. I mentioned the position change. Tuli Tagovailoa Amosa, who was a wide receiver, Tua Tagovailoa's cousin, was a wide receiver for 2 years at San Jose State. Got a little bit of run last year, like few catches here and there. He's actually moved to safety now. So interesting there. Him and Coach Boj are very close. And just given where everything's at defensively, for San Jose State, a lot of moving parts. They think he could translate really well from the defensive side. So again, haven't talked to him one-on-one, but I feel like that's an interesting move. People should be aware of. And I can most certainly follow up when I do get some more clarity on the move and things like that. But that is that. That's what I do have to report on. As far as some other, I guess quotable quotes I have just from, I guess, some things that have happened that went on in spring. I've mentioned a lot of them, but I feel like the big one has been on the defensive line. There's been 3 guys that have really sparked and have a lot of high praise for thus far on the defensive side of the ball for San Jose State. I mentioned Brian Dukes, an experienced guy out in the secondary. He's gotten a lot of love from the coaches, and Coach Ken talked about him. Boj spoke highly of him, just saying like, hey, he's come out here and he's been everything we've hoped for. From not only from a football standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint as well. They feel the same way for Justin Stearns. If anyone's heard Justin Stearns talk, he is a confident individual that know what he's saying. And he's been at San Jose State for he's been there his whole career. So 4 years now. This is a guy that I think is probably going to be starting on your defensive line this year. So not the last time we'll be talking about him. And then a new guy that has also been with the program, with the linebacker room's got tons and tons of new faces this year just because they graduated them all. Jordan Pollard graduated. Taniela Latu graduated. But Nasir Danielson, but goes by Nas. He's been a guy that has really shaped up to be, one of the big time, I guess, emerging players at the linebacker position. Like, if you are looking maybe for your potential like Jordan Pollard replacement, it's gonna be really tough to replace him, right? Because he's a tackling machine. But Nas Danielson can be your guy that you can plug right in and you're going to get instant impact at that position. Was a BYU recruit, didn't play there, didn't really play too much last year with the San Jose State team. Just given all of the veteran leadership and experience that they had in that linebacker room. This team also still has Ethan Powell as an outside linebacker as well. But Nas Danielson is a name to circle and be highly aware of, because you are going to see him on the field this year for the Spartans. And he actually did have a play. He did have an interception in the spring game where he did have an interception. I don't remember. It might have been on Luke Weaver, on one of the quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure it was Luke Weaver in that game. So he's out there making an impact. He's flying all over the place. So that was a name that was a guy that the coaches talked about, but that was a guy I even had written down as well on my spring game notes as, hey, keep an eye on him. Real quickly before we do get ourselves out of here, here is our schedule for the San Jose State football season. This team's playing in week 0 again at USC. So extra eyeballs, of course, week 0. Feel like it's got a few more games this year. I know they're playing some games, like they're playing one more game overseas than what they normally do. Funny stuff, but regardless, this game is in Los Angeles. It's the week 0 game at USC. Again, if you're listening to us on the audio side, youtube.com/@thesportsentiment. If you want to see the full schedule graphic that I have posted for the YouTube audience. But at USC, San Jose State and USC played 3 years ago in week 0. That was the year Caleb Williams won the Heisman, was the #1 overall pick. And San Jose State scored tons of points on that Lincoln Riley team several years back. I think they hung like over 28 points on them. Problem was USC hung like 52. And Caleb Williams had Zachariah Branch and Jordan Addison and several other really good wide receivers that are, blue chippers in the NFL now. So week 0 game, you get some extra eyes on that game just because most of those games are standalone and not every team in America is playing, of course. And then again, like this non-conference is very interesting. Like Friday, September 4th at Eastern Michigan, a Friday game, a short week going across the country to Ypsilanti. Never easy. I had a nugget during the offseason that I tweeted out that San Jose State has never won at a MAC venue in their program history. They've played MAC teams before. Their most recent game that they played at a MAC venue was at Toledo 3 years ago. I believe it was 3 years ago. And they lost that game. They've historically have had terrible track record versus the MAC, I feel like, since like 2019. So little nugget there. They play FCS Cal Poly, so that is, I guess, a revenge game, if you want to call it one, for Brian Dukes Jr. For the new Spartan safety. Cal Cal Poly, they got themselves a new head coach this year. Their coach, Tim Skipper, the Fresno State interim coach from a couple of years back, former Fresno State linebacker, the interim coach at UCLA last year as well, who ended up picking off Penn State back when they were ranked. So a lot of familiarity there, just because Tim Skipper was, prepping for San Jose State games when he was serving, in the Central Valley for some time. Of course, you still have the Battle for the Valley. That's a non-conference game. That's in San Jose, and then you have your bye week, and then your Mountain West schedule as well. You're at Hawaii, at UTEP, at Nevada, at Air Force. Your Mountain West road games, and then home versus Wyoming, New Mexico, Northern Illinois, UNLV, and then North Dakota State. Actually, that North Dakota State game is a non-conference game, we need to mention. Is a non-conference game. Despite North Dakota State being in the Mountain West, that is essentially your Jacksonville State, the Jacksonville State game. That is essentially the replacement of it. Just because Jack State ended up pulling out of the game. So that's that. So that just reminder, we'll remind everybody this months down the road, non-conference this year versus North Dakota State, even though they are a Mountain West member. So interesting stuff. Schedule is, I think everybody plays North Dakota State this year. Yes, pretty sure that's right. I think it's the UTEP game will be interesting. Altitude, of course, at the Sun Bowl. Northern Illinois comes to San Jose this year, which I think is a plus. I think if you had to go at UTEP and at Northern Illinois, it makes for an interesting road schedule. This team gets to go to Hawaii for the first official game versus Hawaii on the island under this coaching staff, which you already know they'll be up for. But an interesting schedule nonetheless. Feel like there's a bunch of interesting bullet points and nuggets that we can bend across. I'll have way more, info and intel, again, just on the schedule once when we break everybody's down, and once when we get to, I guess, probably towards closer to the summertime with Mountain West Media Days. Just we'll have plenty more information on all that good stuff, but wanted to put that out there now that we have the official San Jose State schedule out there. Because remember that we had a schedule posted like 3 months ago, and that was before the North Dakota State edition. Then North Dakota State suddenly joined the league. We had to redo that schedule, and then with Jack State getting out of there, redoing their non-conference, we had to redo it again. So that is the official concrete schedule that we have for SJSU this year. We don't think there's going to be any more changes to that. So, hey, that's what we got for us on this episode of the Sports Sentiment. Wanted to come on here and just talk some college football with everybody, get everybody up to page on, just all things SJSU football. Since we have been around with the team a little bit, talking to coaches, players, all that good stuff. If you're not following us on Twitter, I highly advise you do so, because when I do go out there, we're always posting interviews and things like that, on the Twitter space, that it's at Nick Urias _. So give us a follow, like, retweet, all that stuff. We're gonna continue to provide all of that inside coverage. So again, helps us out a ton. Appreciate the support, everybody. We're gonna be back very soon. Who knows what we'll be talking about? As far as just college football stuff. Probably come on here. Who knows when, but just to kind of reset things from a Mountain West standpoint, maybe get a new guest from one of the newcomers on. I'll have some things up my sleeve. So have that notification bell on as well. So the second we drop videos like these and updates like these, you're on top of it. So again, appreciate everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Once again, I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.